That's okay. So it's recording, everybody. We've just been working to get together to make sure that the intent is the same and that that we're really having a holistic view for an urban tree canopy. So that was voted and was passed 4-1 to move it forward as a council initiated project. And what that does is it means that the council is now responsible for paying for the SEPA and for the notice and all of that. So that keeps our environmental community from having to pay for that, because it's such an important value of our county, and we're recognizing that this should be part of our comprehensive plan. So the early part of this year is state environmental policy review, and then they're sending out each element or each kind of big policy chunk out for public comment. So they did urban canopy last month, and this month until May 1st is time to comment on the tribal consultation piece and then a new climate change element. So even though they just passed the bill, that the climate change bill for Davina Dewar, they just passed it. We wouldn't have to necessarily follow it because we've already started our process. We do intend to follow the components of that bill and include climate change in our comprehensive plan. So that those policy suggestions are on the website, and they are open for comment until May 1st. So please participate and send in as many comments as possible. And I wanted to note as well that we did send the urban tree canopy work to Ben, and his team is also going to be looking at it for how we can kind of coordinate and collaborate, because there's a special emphasis for the Snohomish watershed at the state level. So how can we make sure that our language is supporting what they're trying to do as well? So that is the early part of this year is public comment. And then the later part of this year, each piece will then go to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission will vote and propose amendments if needed, but they also allow public testimony at each of those points. So if something gets changed between now and then, we can still have time to change it back. And then May 20, and then the final vote, it'll go before the Planning Commission, could have amendments, come back to the council, and the council's final vote will be September of 2024, because we got like a 6-month extension to allow more time for work. So the 2024 comp plan, it takes 2 years or so. We're about a year into it, and the final vote won't be until next year, but there's plenty of time for public comment. And so far we have some really great language in there that's going to be the first time for including urban trees and looking at tree canopy in a holistic way and as a solution for climate change, and also recognizing quality of life and human health.
Wow. Yeah, no, and that just doesn't happen overnight, Megan.
Yeah,
a lot of time going. We truly appreciate that you put such energy and effort behind this. It really means the world for what we hope will be a substantial mitigation for climate change for our community. And yeah,
and I would ask Kate to add anything as well, because we've just been hand in hand working together. I send her an email and she writes right back, so
okay.
She's been wonderful.
Thanks, Megan. I think you've laid it out nicely for what we have to look forward to, and I'm really looking forward to your participation with Ben and DNR and how they might be able to help us. So that's exciting.
Yes, very much so. Margie, I know you have to take off too. So do you want to say a quick update on what happened with the marsh? You're muted, so unmute.
Sorry. I said I didn't want to take the DNR time. That's what we're focused here for. Just know that Edwin's politics is a mess, and I'll keep you informed.
Thanks, Margie. really appreciate. Well, I don't know if I appreciate that kind of perspective, but thank you for keeping us informed. All right,
Margie, at least they're consistent.
Well, we've got Ben Thompson here. He's practically a member of this committee. He's been here many times in the past and helped us form so many of our policies and so forth. And he brought his team with him today. Emily Roberts is here, as well as Julia Cass. And Ben, you've done so much for us in terms of giving us the grounding for going ahead with an urban tree canopy policy in our county. And I know that you don't just stop working when something when something gets underway. So please give us the newest and the latest and the greatest and going forth here. And I've made you co-host, so if you want to screen share, please go ahead and do so.
Okay. Let's see, sorry, with everything that's happening now, there's a lot of exciting things happening. There's a lot of movement for urban forestry, both state level and locally. As you can see with what Megan is working on, that certainly qualifies as a lot of movement for urban forestry at the local level in Snohomish County. So I don't have like a formal PowerPoint presentation to walk you through, but I did make some notes in PowerPoint that I can share. And I think I'm probably just gonna, if it's all right with you, I'll just take you on a tour of the internet with some different links to information, and I'll try to capture those links and then drop them in the chat, so that way you've got them and know where to go to find this information that I'm going to review with you. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. First, though, before I get started, I do want to introduce Julia and Em. Em, I know you're kind of like in travel status. You may not be able to pipe in, but just feel free to unmute yourself if you are available to say hello.
Hi, I am available to say hello. It's nice to see you all and to meet you all. I'm Em Roberts. I'm the urban forestry technician for DNR on Western Washington. So thanks for having us.
Thanks, Em. And Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm our Evergreen Communities Coordinator. Nice to meet you all.
This group has a lot of interest in what you're working on, Julia. Just FYI, they will be calling you in the future. Now that they have a face to the name, they will be calling you. And so Ben Thompson, Urban and Community Forestry Program Manager at DNR. So let me start here with the screen share. Okay. So I can. Okay. Oops, you're probably seeing my let me do this again. Let me try it again. There we go. How's that?
That looks great.
Okay. So I just wanted to update you on the implementation of what was 1216. That was the name of the bill when it passed in 2021. Those bill numbers get recycled. So there's a new bill that's 1216 that's got nothing to do with urban forestry in this current legislative session. So if you go looking for 1216, you're not going to find the urban forestry information you're looking for. Instead, you need to go to 7615 RCW. So now that that bill has passed, this is where the information on urban forestry lives. So we are seriously testing my multitasking capabilities today in this. Oh, and now that I'm in screen share mode, I don't have the chat open. Here, I will do this, Julia, since I can have better access to Teams from here instead of the chat. What I will do is I will text you the links through Teams, and then you can paste them into the chat here for us. How's that?
Sounds perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing is, Ben, if you send the slides to us,
Yeah, I could do that too.
if you send them to me, then I'll send them out to the group.
Yep.
And also, we are recording this, so
Sure.
we'll have that access as well.
Okay, that's fine. So we had funding for we had $100,000 for 2 tree canopy projects. So we did a canopy analysis in the city of Longview and the city of Yakima. I wanted to do one on the east side, one on the west side. We chose Yakima because it's an area of high environmental health disparity according to the environmental health disparities map. And it's a city that we're trying to sort of coax a little bit more engagement in urban forestry out of. They're a fairly sizable population center, I think around 50,000 people or so for Eastern Washington. And so they had an arborist on staff recently. That person retired. So we're just hoping to inspire some movement over there. And then Longview is one of the largest communities on the west side without a tree canopy analysis. And that was in part that decision was in part based on the grant that we just completed to conduct tree canopy analyses in all the communities in King, Pierce, and Snohomish County. So those projects were complete. Staffing update, we had enough money to fund several new positions. So several of those have been hired. First, because we had increased money for grants, we hired more capacity on our grants and contract staff. So that person's name is Austin Hayes. And now there's recently another hire who I can't recall that person's name because they haven't even started yet, but just know that we've got more capacity on the grant side of things to help get agreements drafted and get grants out the door. So there's some efficiencies to be gained there. We also have a GIS and data analyst. His name is Drew Lyons. He's working on several different projects for us. One is kind of collating tree inventory data from communities and other organizations around the state, like college campuses that are collecting kind of point-based tree by tree data. We've got, I think, approximately 500,000 trees in our inventory right now from communities statewide. And so we're looking for opportunities to sort of increase the number of trees in that data set. Drew's also working on a prioritization that's part of the RCW 7615. It says that we need to basically build a prioritization for distribution of our funding that includes several factors. One of those is the health disparities map. Another one is it's a little bit general, but it's about data for salmon and orca recovery. There is no orca recovery data out there. And there's not even salmon recovery data for that matter. It's really just about water quality, watershed quality, imperiled streams, like fish passage barriers, that kind of stuff. So we did the best we could with the data that we had available. And so we haven't quite finalized it yet. It's very close, but we're hopeful that once it's published, it will be a tool that's available to communities to sort of like understand where we are prioritizing the delivery of our resources. And also I expect that you'll be able to kind of play with it, just like you can play with the environmental health disparities map to see like, well, what's the lead exposure, or what's the arsenic exposure, or what's the exposure of any of these other pollutants. You should be able to do that with our map as well, like play with slider bars to figure out, well, if we prioritized water quality, which places would show up the brightest? If we prioritize this other feature, where would show up the brightest in our communities? So, so stay tuned for that. We are already using a sort of prioritization already, and that is the health disparities map. So for example, with our grants, we give basically a 50% discount on matching requirements for cities that scored 8, 9, or 10 according to the health disparities map. And actually, I don't have a link for the health disparities map in here, and I think this group is familiar, but Julia, if you could just look up the health disparities map information by location tool and drop that link in the chat, that would be great. So there's another project that's kicking off as a result of 7615, and that's our Urban Forest Inventory and Analysis Project, or UFIA for short. UFIA is a Forest Service program. The Forest Service has an inventory of all of the forested areas in the country, and that's called the FIA, the Forest Inventory and Analysis. And then, I don't know, 30 years ago or so, 20 years ago, maybe not even, that data collection protocol was adapted for urban spaces. And so the Forest Service has been trying to roll out UFIA across the country, but they don't have specific budget dollars to do it. So when dollars become available at the state level, they partner with the states to implement this particular program. So what this will be, it'll be a series of randomized plot-based data. So we'll find, you know, a geographic center point, and then it'll be a circular plot around that center point. And within that, all the trees get cataloged. Now the data collection protocols are very strict. Once those plots are established, the Forest Service has given us strict guidance that we are not allowed to share the locations of that, because if the locations of the plots are shared, somebody could go and kind of tinker with what's there. So even though, let's say a plot, because they're randomly located, they could fall on private property, they could fall on public property. So let's say that there's a plot that covers 3 individual people's properties. It just happens to fall so that the plot crosses the property line. So assuming that we have permission from those property owners to collect the data, we would go out, collect those data, and then re-inventory that plot 10 years later. And so while property ownership might change, or while a tree might die, or while a homeowner might remove one for, say, like a new addition on their house or a new patio in the backyard, like that's all fine. We expect that there's going to be change in those plots, but what we don't want is for someone to say like, oh, this is a research plot and now I'm going to go mess with it. I'm going to intervene on this plot and start changing the structure to tinker with the data integrity. So, so we're not allowed to share the locations. We do need permission from landowners to collect the data. There's a rigorous process to get trained and qualified to do the data collection. We have 2 new staff that we've hired to do that work. That's Daria Gashtala, who was our outreach specialist. We promoted her to our inventory specialist, and we've hired a guy named Zach Melema, and he's our inventory technician. We also hope to be bringing on a second data collector alongside Zach to assist with this process. Anyway, that project will kick off with data collection starting in spring of 2024, so a year from now. But that's just the kind of runway that they have set up before they could, all of their like forest inventory analysis and urban forest inventory analysis operates according to this very strict schedule. And for us to sort of like slide into the schedule, we have to like kind of get in line and get poised to come in kind of like at the right time. It's complicated and hard to explain, but that's where we're coming into this from. Now that I jumped ahead from my staffing update, I apologize. But so I covered our contract specialist, our data analyst. I covered our new inventory specialist, our new inventory technician. One of our existing positions was our urban forestry specialist that was previously held by Jess Lloyd, who may have attended some of these meetings before. Jess vacated her position in December and moved back home to California. So that position is currently vacant. So the urban forestry specialist and the outreach specialist, because we promoted Daria from within, those are 2 vacancies that we're trying to fill. The urban forestry specialist will supervise 2 technicians. So M. Roberts is one of them, who's here with us today. She's our technician for Western Washington. And especially in the absence of our urban forestry specialist, is leading technical assistance in Western Washington. We have a parallel position for technical assistance in Eastern Washington, another technician. We weren't able to fill that position when we first advertised it due to like lack of qualified candidates. So those 3 vacant positions are ones that we hope to advertise. I'm hopeful before the end of the month, but it's going to be very soon. Within a matter of weeks, we'll have those positions advertised. We have another position that we put in for with 7615. That's a kind of like a grants planner, someone to assist us on the sort of like, not this, we have new staff for the kind of the mechanics of creating agreements and like fulfilling legal requirements, but just someone to sort of just keep track and develop documents. Here's the request for applications. Here's the schedule that we're going to follow. Someone to coordinate the review team, someone to coordinate the review and award process, someone to follow up with successful grantees on reporting and invoicing and timelines and all that good stuff. So that position is also currently vacant. It's been a little bit of a challenge with our HR folks find the right position classification for that role because it's extremely unique position within DNR. So the positions that DNR might normally try to fill or the classifications we might normally try to use don't really fit. And so it's been a little bit of a challenge to get that one figured out. So that position will be delayed further until we can get to the end of that discussion with HR. But it's been almost a year already. So for that particular position. I'll let Julia talk about Evergreen Communities here in a minute, but I'll jump ahead to tribal engagement. Like this is an obligation and it's in RCW 7615. It's pretty vague. It just says that we are to consult with tribes on urban forestry work. But it doesn't, it's not any more clear than that. So consult with which tribes, the federally recognized ones or all tribes, or like under what circumstances or for what reasons or when or how many times do we engage them? And is it anywhere that urban forestry work is happening? Anywhere that we think urban forestry work might be happening, or anywhere where we are providing urban forestry services? So we've also had a lot of turnover with our tribal engagement staff at DNR. So it's been a challenge for me to sort of get their attention for this kind of work, but I've been very vocal about the fact that we need to get up on that because it's an obligation that we are not living up to in the way that we should be. The Evergreen Communities program, this is something I know this group has a keen interest in. Julia was hired as our Evergreen Communities coordinator, and in general, she is responsible for all of our recognition programs. So that includes things like Tree City USA, Tree Line USA, Tree Campus USA. Those are the things that we already manage. And she's charged with developing the new designation. So Julia, do you want to chime in and just talk a little bit about what you got?
Absolutely. So since when I started, the first thing I worked on was the Tree City application review along with Tree Line and Tree Campus. So a lot of my time was taken up by that. And now that those are all reviewed and kind of finalized, we're able to kind of transition into focusing on Evergreen Communities. And now that I have a better idea of how DNR works and the communities that would be participating, it's very helpful. So it was a great kind of time to come in my opinion. But right now we're working on putting together a kind of steering committee that will guide the application process, provide a diverse group of opinions based on community size and experience and kind of accessibility to the program. So working on that right now, and then hopefully this fall we'll have a couple pilot communities or counties that are able to participate, and we can work some kinks out and see what happens and then move forward from there in the new year.
All right. Thanks, Julia. Let's see. So we had a couple other grants prior to the 1216 bill passing. We had a few other grants that now I'm trying to get back to my internet and something's not working well. So I mentioned one before. It was our with the Nature Conservancy, the work that we did with them. And let me just see if I can stick this over here. Can you see my internet screen over here now?
Yeah.
Okay. So new tools for urban trees. This was a website that was built by the Nature Conservancy with part of the grant work that they did. Julia, I just dropped that one in the chat for you, or in the Teams chat. So just by scrolling, so this first is the tree equity map that was done by American Forest. That's what this background image is, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But they do have some resources here. They worked with City Forest Credits, which is a organization that does carbon crediting for urban forestry projects. And then we got this data set that's available in iTree Landscape, but it's also available in the tree equity map. And that's a urban tree canopy analysis for every incorporated municipality in King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. So there's been some questions since we made the data available, and that's available for download on our website. That's a link that I don't have for you handy, but we can get that to you if any of you lived in or worked with cities in Snohomish County that wanted access to that data. But nonetheless, it's like if the city has no tree canopy analysis to begin with, then our data is a great place to start as a conversation starter. Like I said, so it depending on the community, the accuracy varies a little bit. So it may not be something that you want to make like explicit decisions about, but like I said, just to kind of see what's there and see how you can start sizing up the tree canopy in a given city. It's a good place to start for that. I mentioned the tree equity score and the tree equity map, and I'll dig into more of that later. There's a climate adapted species guide that's there. And that's kind of this project in a nutshell. So this was a $300,000 grant from the Forest Service. We passed a majority of those funds through to the Nature Conservancy. They closed out that project, but still had a little leftover funding. They were about $20,000 or so underspent. So we have a new agreement with them now to work on to basically look at that canopy data, identify areas of low canopy in 2 communities in Snohomish County. That's Everett and Marysville are the 2 target communities, I think, with Monroe as a backup. And then trying to identify like, okay, well, where can we put trees? And let's get some trees in the ground in those low canopy areas in those cities for that. I mean, the 20,000 doesn't really go that far, but it's the project sites. It's going to be scaled to the kind of project sites that are, and those project sites in those 2 communities are yet to be determined. It's just, they're just getting started with that work, but it has to be finished by the end of June. So that's a kind of like an Snohomish County update, if you will, for those pieces. Here's the Trees for Resilience toolkit. Here it is right here. Oh no, hold on. Oh no, I was just there. Where'd it go? Okay, this is the Trees for Resilience toolkit. This was funded by another one of those landscape scale restoration grants, the $300,000 grants from the Forest Service, but it was also paired with some funding from Department of Ecology to create this toolkit. And what it is there's various tabs up here, mapping analysis, policy planning, co-design, funding, stewardship, and about the toolkit. You can come down here and click on any one of these like topic areas. And it provides tools and links to additional resources. But the general premise here is that stormwater assessment fees can be a good funding source for urban forestry. So the Department of Ecology now allows expenditures for urban forestry to be paid for out of stormwater assessment fees. So any of the communities in Snohomish County or statewide that have to complete an MS4 permit through the Department of Ecology. That's the MS4 is like municipal storm sewer system. I'm missing one of the S's. Municipal sanitary and storm sewer systems, something like that. It's basically like a pollution diet. Like they have to get a permit to provide, saying like, we expect that some pollution is going to get into the waterway, and here's what we're doing to mitigate for that and reduce it. So they apply with that permit, and then Ecology approves it. So what is now eligible to include in the permit is work on urban forestry, because we understand that there's a connection between tree canopy and water quality. So since Ecology can approve that work on an MS4 permit, it means that the stormwater assessment fees that are collected by a jurisdiction can go towards that type of activity. So otherwise, those stormwater assessment fees can only be used for activities that help the city comply with its permit. That's why it collects those fees in the first place. So if urban forestry is included in the permit, then some of the fees that are collected for stormwater reduction work can be spent on urban forestry. And the reason that's significant is because of what I just said, like the fees can only be used for activities that mitigate for stormwater, which means that that creates a stable funding source for urban forestry. The city council can't come in and say, you know, we don't think this urban forestry work is worthwhile. We want to invest in something else. And then basically sweep the budget out from under the urban forestry work, because they wouldn't be able to do that. It would be like, well, we have to spend this money on this because we've collected it for that purpose, right? So it can't, that the stormwater assessment money can't be used for anything else. They can't just decide to put that into, you know, schools or libraries or roads or, you know, police, fire, emergency medical. Like all those things have to come out of the general fund of the city budget. The city of Snoqualmie has been a leader in that. They conducted an assessment. They call it their natural asset inventory, and had a consultant identify the sort of like the monetary value associated with all of its rivers, all of its wetlands, all of its trees, all of its parks. And the results were so compelling to the city council that they voted to provide a 40% budget increase for urban forestry work in the city of Snoqualmie. And this was in the pandemic. This was like 2021. I don't know. Are we still in the pandemic? Are we out of the pandemic? I don't even know. But not only that, the next move that they've made is they've consolidated the urban forestry work and the stormwater assessment or the stormwater mitigation work into one work unit. So they've basically made it its own work unit to physically pair those activities together, because they believe that the connection is so strong. There are ordinance templates in here that cities can use to sort of like literally codify the connection between trees and stormwater. So that's another important development that I wanted to share with you. And then we had this other landscape scale restoration grant happening in the Highline School District in South King County. So it covers like South Seattle, SeaTac, Burien, Des Moines, and then a little piece of Tukwila, a little piece of Kent. That project was to go onto K through 12 school campuses, engage the administration, engage the teachers, engage the students and their families in activities that would increase tree canopy and improve the environmental quality of those K through 12 sites. We passed that grant through to a nonprofit in the Seattle region that has since kind of backed out of the project. So I'm in the process of conversations with the Snohomish Conservation District to step in and kind of take over some of that remaining work in that area. And in the conservation district, they have like a interlocal agreement with other conservation districts where they could provide services outside their own county under certain circumstances. But sort of like in those negotiations, the Snohomish Conservation District is interested in doing a similar type project in Snohomish County someplace. So there's nothing really set in stone with that yet, but it does mean that there could be a little bit more happening on at least one K through 12 campus somewhere in Snohomish County as a result of that work, if it goes the direction I think it's going to go. This other project here, it's the oh, I didn't give Daria, I didn't give you the, or I don't know why I keep confusing your names today, Julia, with Daria, because
Oh, I already sent it. It's okay.
Okay, because Daria's not even here, and it's like, maybe I've never done it before like this, so I don't know why I'm doing it today. Anyway, I digress. Where was that? I thought I had just pulled up a link, but maybe I didn't. This this is a grant we got from Department of Ecology. They have a series of projects grants they issue called effectiveness projects. And so this is the water budgets of individual local trees. So this has two phases to it. Phase one has already been complete. And this is very much an academic study. It's studying just like the water processing capacity of trees. So they set up a bunch of instruments on a couple different sites to measure, well, how much rainfall is hitting the site altogether, how much is being intercepted by the tree canopy, how much is flowing down the stem at different times during the rain event, how much is falling through the canopy and not hitting anything and just getting absorbed directly by the forest floor, how much water is being taken up by the roots, how much is being transpired through the leaves. So like, what does that cycle and that water process look like for individual trees? And they've moved on to, we were fortunate to be funded for a phase 2 using younger, smaller trees. So what this is trying to do is fill the gap in the best available science to treat trees as a water quality improvement device in the stormwater manual from Department of Ecology. So right now, Department of Ecology will allow you to use trees to mitigate the effects of development as a flow control device, but not as a water quality improvement device, because we just don't have that. We just don't have that data. So I think I have that right. So essentially, like with this data, it will give Department of Ecology more latitude to basically give more credits for the retention of existing trees on development sites, as well as more credits for the planting of trees to offset future runoff. So those stormwater manuals are not prescriptive. They just provide local jurisdictions with a list of options for mitigating their stormwater. And then the cities will basically pass those options on to the developer. So there's no mandate or requirement to preserve trees unless the local jurisdiction puts those kinds of requirements in their codes. But the Department of Ecology doesn't require that and probably won't. It's just basically saying, here's a list of options that you can use to comply, and however you choose to comply is up to you, as long as you do it to like the right level. If that makes any sense. Okay, next thing. And so that phase 2 is still ongoing at this point. They're still collecting data and doing some more analysis. I just wanted to give you an update on our grants for Snohomish County. So last year in 2022, we issued grants to the cities of Everett, Linwood, Mountlake Terrace, and Snohomish. Everett got a grant for some tree inventory work. Linwood got a grant for canopy analysis, but also invasive species mapping for their parks. Mountlake Terrace was building out a new program called Trees for Terrace, where they were identifying areas in the right-of-way that were eligible for planting, and then doing some initial outreach to property owners to say, you know, we've identified this location as an area that's ripe for a tree that doesn't have one. Like, let us know if you're interested, and we'll work on providing a tree for that space. So it's kind of that city's first real foray into like urban forestry activities on the ground, as far as I know. And then the city of Snohomish was trying to do an inventory and management plan. They had underestimated the cost of their inventory. And so what originally was supposed to be us, DNR, paying for the inventory and the management plan, it's now just us paying for the inventory in total, because it was more expensive than they thought it was going to be. And the city is going to write its own management plan beyond the period of performance for our grants. And so those grants are all coming to a close. They all have to be completed by June 1 or May 31st, I think, of this year. So those projects are wrapping up. And then in 2023, well, so we also give, Megan mentioned the Snohomish watershed, which covers a chunk of Snohomish County and a chunk of King County. And we give extra points in our grants to incentivize projects from the Snohomish watershed. And I think in 2022, the only one who applied within the Snohomish watershed was Duval, which of course, as you know, is in King County. So even though we gave, Snohomish also, I believe, is in the Snohomish watershed, but Mountlake Terrace, Linwood, and Everett is too. So Everett and Snohomish got the extra points. that helped them secure those awards. Mount Lake Terrace and Linwood are outside the watershed, so they didn't get those points. In 2023, we only had one community from Snohomish County apply, and that's Mount Lake Terrace. They've applied for an extension of their existing project. And the only community in the Snohomish watershed that applied is Snoqualmie, which again is in King County. So so for 2023, we haven't made any final grant decisions yet. We're still in the process of reviewing and awarding those applications. But I just brought this to your attention because there's a lot more communities in Snohomish County that could be applying for our grants that aren't. And basically, in spite of our incentivizing work in the Snohomish watershed, like that's not working either. And that's been a historic challenge for us in those communities in the watershed. There's about a dozen communities that are in the Snohomish watershed. And with the exception of Snoqualmie, North Bend to a lesser degree, Monroe a little bit, like outside of those communities, it's been very hard to engage other cities in urban forestry work. So the next thing I wanted to bring to your attention is our tree equity work with American Forests. So that's the tree equity map. Julia, if you wouldn't mind looking that up. So tree equity is a term coined by American Forests. American Forests is a national nonprofit. And as a nonprofit, they're blocking their webpage with like a donation thing that I don't need. How do you get rid of it?
In the top left corner, if you click their logo,
There you go. Okay. So, and this here is, that's Commissioner Franz. This is Jed Daly, the Executive Director of American Forests. They're both on the left side of that image there. And then the mayor of Seattle is a gentleman in the beige trench coat. And then the person speaking is from the Duwamish Alive group. But this was an announcement for a memorandum of understanding between this national nonprofit American Forests and DNR to bring greater awareness of tree equity to Washington State. American Forests, having coined that term tree equity, they've built their own tree equity mapping tool, and as well as tree equity score analyzer. So let me see, so the tree equity score, see your city's tree equity score here. Let's see. How are we doing on time? I feel like I'm using a lot of time, Joan, but. Okay, so here's Everett, for example, and and our data from that landscape scale restoration project feeds this map. So, here's a tree equity score of 40. This particular census block in Everett. Here's another one on the bluff over here, a score of 84. So if you're a wealthier neighborhood on the bluff, or you're a poorer neighborhood in this more industrial part of Everett, like it changes your tree equity score. So it's based on canopy cover, but it's also based on like socioeconomic and demographic information as well. And this just gives a nice way for anyone, but especially community decision makers, to really see how tree canopy and tree canopy scores, tree equity scores differ from census tract to census tract. So it gives you some indicators over here. I would just encourage everyone to explore the map and check it out. So we're going to see a lot more of that in Washington State. Right now, the areas that are covered is primarily the Puget Sound region, but we want to expand that and go like further north of Everett. I think Bellingham and Vancouver are included too, but there's a lot of smaller communities that we're hoping to include with increased mapping. Okay. The next big thing is the Inflation Reduction Act. So the Inflation Reduction Act was passed last year by Congress. It dedicated a historic $1.5 billion for urban forestry over a 10-year period. So the states were given the opportunity to apply first. Washington State was awarded $6 million from that initial award amount. Sorry, from the of that 1.5 billion. So we will have maybe not 6 million entirely, but we'll use some of that funding for other purposes, but the majority of that funding, probably in the neighborhood of at least 4 million, will go out in pass-through grants in 2024. And we haven't designed that system yet to figure out, because it's a lot more money than we've ever offered before, and we're trying to figure out the best way to do that and the best way to get it out. So I couldn't even begin to tell you, like, it's not going to look like our current grant program. It's going to be different. We could have higher dollar amounts. We could have multi-year awards. We could take a portion of it and dedicate it to specific communities that meet those areas of high health disparity or low tree equity score. But we haven't made any decisions about how we're going to get those dollars out, so it's hard to say. But anyone that's eligible for our grants now will continue to be eligible for those in the future. But there's also, the Forest Service has put out up to $1 billion available in grants that are available to any of the organizations that could apply for one of our grants, but now you can apply directly to the Forest Service. So the minimum grant request is $100,000. The maximum request is $50 million. Those are 5-year grants. Even if we put some of our funding out in multi-year grants, we probably will only have 3-year grants by the time we advertise them and create, award projects and create agreements. Like we're going to be running out of time to give people more than 3 years. And so there was a webinar that was recorded on March 29th. There's a link to that here. There's a summary text for the notice of funding opportunity. There's instructions on how to apply. There's an additional webinar happening on the 25th. I think that's already booked up, but they will be recording it and posting it here. The deadline is June 1st. So anyone that's interested in applying needs to basically apply now. They need to start working on it now. We're going to host a webinar on May 3rd that's going to talk about what we were awarded and what the Forest Service is offering. And hopefully we'll have a representative from the Forest Service at that webinar on the 3rd. And we hope at that event to try to get people's questions answered. There's also in that funding 100% match waiver for projects that are in those highly impacted communities, those high scoring health disparity areas. So here is a link to our newsletter. I'm going to drop in the chat for Julia. That's got information about our webinar and how to register for that. In addition to the webinar, we're also hosting office hours for 2 hours a week, every week between May 10th, I think, and May 29th. So I think there's 4 2-hour office hour sessions where if people have questions about their proposals or the process, we'll just be available for people to kind of pop into those Zoom calls. And so, Julia, if you could forward the email to Joan that has the office hours on it.
Yep.
And then that way she can get it out to the membership. Okay. So the last thing I'll point out is that emerald ash borer, you may have heard of, it's a destructive invasive pest. It was discovered in Michigan over 20 years ago or so now, but it's basically wiped out all the ash trees in most of the United States already. But it's had been mostly confined to the Midwestern states and the Eastern states. But now it was moving west. It was in Colorado, and then it was discovered in the Portland metro area last summer. So we expect that insect will find its way to Washington. We just don't know when. It could already be here for all we know, and we just haven't found it yet. But it's going to have an impact on our native ash trees. which are primarily located in Southwest Washington, although you do see them in more limited numbers as far north as Snohomish County. You'll see them in Whatcom County too, but the further north you go, the less chance of actually seeing an ash tree you'll actually get. But it's going to be a big impact for cities that have non-native ash planted as street trees. There's a lot of ash cultivars that for generations have made excellent street trees, and those trees will be at risk from emerald ash borer in the future. And the last thing I'll leave you with is our current legislative session. We had put a request in for $8 million. We made it into the governor's budget for $6 million. We are, I think, in the House budget at $4 million. I think we're in the Senate budget as $6 million. Those budgets have not been reconciled yet, but there is, I think, relative consensus that the money would be spent out of the new Climate Commitment Fund, which I think that's a great fund for investing in urban forestry work, but it means that it will only be whatever funding we receive would only be for the next biennium. So we had requested operating funds, which would give us that money on an ongoing basis. And so we will have, maybe as much as $4 million in increased funding from the federal inflation reduction funds for grants next year, but it's possible we'll also have $2 to $3 million of state funding available in grants as well. So we need to generate a lot of interest in the grants that are out there. So I think until those budgets are reconciled, until the session is over, I think there's still opportunity for the legislature to make changes to things. But as far as I'm concerned, and I think even a lot of people at DNR, it's just out of our hands at this point. Like our legislative team has done essentially all of the legwork that they can to make the need understood. But whatever they want to provide is great. We'll use that money. It's just that it would be better if it was ongoing, but still, it's a huge, considering where we were in 2020, where we had an annual federal grant budget of about $400,000 a year and 2 staff people. Everything that I've talked to you about today is incredible. So thanks for letting me soak up a whole bunch of your meeting. I'm officially finished. Thanks for letting me talk your ear off.
Thank you, Ben. You were so full of information. I was not going to stop the roll here. It was very welcome to hear about all of these things. And I do hope you'll share slides with us, and that there's a lot of information there that is easily accessible to others if they we did know about the tree equity score page because we heard from American Forest. They came to us and presented, and it's a tool that Kate used in the Delta project that went on here in Everett. So it has been found and has been accessed and used to its advantage. I don't know how to begin to thank you, and I'm sure there's a host of questions. I noticed that one of the first things when you mentioned that emerald ash borer, Kate wanted to ask Ben, have you let PDS know that that's not a tree to select for street trees?
What's PDS?
The planning departments of the various vicinities, is there a memo that goes out, avoid this tree, or anything that's gone out from your office to them warning?
Yeah, we do have a guidance document that is on our website. Let me see if I could pull that up. That does suggest not planting ash trees, but we've done our best to try to promote that and to get it out there. But if people are not seeking the information, or if they're not signed up for our newsletter, like, we can't know who's getting it and who's not getting it. And there's not really a better way for us to distribute that information. So
we hear you, and we hear you. You're just doing the best you can.
Right. So we do have this for this document here that I just put in the chat.
Great, that's good. The mountain ash that grows in that's a native to our area is a lovely tree to have as part of our canopy around here. It has color in all seasons and food for our wildlife. So
But the mountain ash are not they're not susceptible to it because they're not an ash tree. They're a separate species.
oh, well, that makes me happier. I'm feeling.
Yep.
I was thinking we were going to lose some of these natives, and I'm feeling better now. Thank you.
No, yeah. So mountain ash is a different genus. So it's a totally separate species that's not
Good.
palatable to emerald ash borer. We're talking about trees that are in the genus Fraxinus. So it's like white ash, green ash, our native Oregon ash. And there's a bunch of there's a blue ash, there's a black ash, there's, many of these are native to other parts of the United States. The Oregon ash is the only native one that we have, but that's an important species though, because it's a large shade tree that grows in some of the wettest parts of our riparian areas. And so it occupies a niche that not a lot of other species can occupy because they can just survive like big, like inundations of water in the soil that they grow in. And they provide so much shade too, right? So it's like they're an important species for like regulating stream temperature and preventing erosion, and really none of our other native trees can fill the niche of the Oregon ash. So if it does get into our Oregon ash populations, like we're going to lose a very important riparian tree species.
Yeah, we don't want that. And then they found nothing that can fight it off, I take.
It's
right?
never been successfully contained or eradicated in any of the other states it's been through. So
Are there other questions? I'm sorry. We went through the chat. There's let's see. There's a little comment about COVID in the waters. Kate Lunsford asked about legacy trees being added then to in Snohomish County to add to the data collection. Are you part of that? I noticed in the federal count they were counting in federal property ownership, or I guess we all own it, the legacy trees as well as the old growth forest trees in their count. Do you use that as part of your inventory at all, or is that a different?
So we will be collecting some data on our own, but for the most part, we're just collecting data that's already been collected by another organization. So if you're aware of tree by tree point-based data that's in our communities, because like when you're saying legacy tree, like that definition means something different no matter which jurisdiction you're in, because it's, there's like legacy tree, heritage tree, historic tree, landmark tree, significant tree, like all these terms kind of bleed together. And so when you say that, it actually doesn't really mean that much to me. So I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, for the federal government, it was 30 inches in diameter.
Okay.
They were counting. I'm not sure what it would be for us, but that was
on national forest land, or
it was throughout. They've been doing a count. They left out some significant places, like they didn't count anything in national parks, and they didn't count anything in Alaska. So
yeah, and we wouldn't add that to our data set because we're primarily interested in trees in the urban landscape. So
and so when you say inventory in the urban landscape, how do people go about collecting that information, and who is it? The master gardeners that you set out to do this, or garden clubs, or is it city councils that designate somebody?
Yeah, I mean, there are some cases where volunteers will do tree inventory work, but for the most part, it's done either by a municipal forester or by a consultant. And it's someone walking around with a handheld digital data collection device that's taking the GPS location, and then they're populating a series of attributes that says it's this species, it's this tall, it's this diameter, it needs this kind of maintenance work, it's in this kind of condition. this is the kind of grow space that it's in, this is what it needs, this is, yeah, the pest and disease issues, et cetera, et cetera. So it takes someone physically looking at the tree and then punching the information into a handheld computer basically to make it all go.
Yeah, that's time consuming, I'd say. The other thing is, one of the considerations is corridors. What happens with urban tree canopy so often is that there's a development here and a development over there, and keeping things connected in some way seems to me like it would be a vital consideration for all concerned, so that people can access not only what's right immediately available to them on their street, but maybe have a pathway to access other park areas or other places that are. So is there any push, Ben, to try to make sure that there are these corridors that connect our urban forest areas?
I mean, I'm sure there's documents out there that would provide some more guidance on that in particular, but I mean, those are the kinds of local decisions that, you know, if the local jurisdiction is interested in doing that, then like we could potentially help them answer questions that they might have about how to accomplish that. But, you know, we don't have anything that, you know, written down that says like cities should do this or communities should do this. Like, we may get there in the future thanks to our increased staffing, but, you know, we're still trying to play catch up after being just a staff of 2 people. So there's a lot of those types of things that maybe there's a reason that we should have them, but we just don't have them. We've never had the capacity to create them. So
another side to that, I noticed that the health equity is a huge consideration for urban tree canopy in terms of directing projects. But one of the things I always think of when I'm thinking of health equity is the health of our wildlife in Puget Sound and how we keep that protected. And you were saying earlier that there isn't too much right now data collected as to how that urban tree canopy is helping to contribute to that. So is that something to be watchful about, or what do we do to make that more in evidence for others?
well, I mean, it's you know, it's the old adage in academia, like further study is needed, right? So it's like if there isn't someone with the academic credentials picking up that issue and studying it, then it's not getting created. So and without it, then we can't use it in any kind of, because, you know, most of the time, especially for Growth Management Act, like everything in that guidance for growth management and city comp plans and county comp plans, like it has to be science-based information. And if we don't have the science, then we don't have the information. And then we can't base decisions off of it. So that's why our effectiveness project is trying to like chisel away at that a little bit in one small way, right? By saying like, here's how trees are positively contributing to stormwater mitigation. Therefore, Department of Ecology, you should give more credits for people that protect and plant trees on development sites.
Yeah. Do we have other questions here, you guys? I'm always full of questions, Ben. So I don't
That's cool.
I think one of the big things that I see is protecting our bluffs above the Puget Sound and trying to keep that forest canopy in evidence and available, and also around our streams and our riparian zones. I'm surprised that you haven't had more grants from some of the people that we know that are instrumental in protecting of watersheds, and maybe it's just a matter of information not getting to the right place or time. But I'm thinking of our own Tom Murdoch and the Adopt a Stream Foundation here in Everett. So he's always out there planting trees in the watershed. He has a big project going this weekend again. So
Lael has her hand up.
Oh, thanks so very much. Happy to hear this good news. I'm glad this bill passed and now in statute. But I have a hard time understanding when how does one statute supersede over another? It sounds like these are all activities that are optional in comprehensive planning. And what I don't understand is, like, this other bill passed as well with flying colors, 5412, reducing land use permitting workloads. And which essentially, I think I understand it as being that it fast tracks around SEPA requirements. And I searched in that bill, there's none of the words came up in a search for water, ground, stormwater, watershed, trees, canopy, equity, land use, forest, resilience, disparity, health, communities, green. I'm really obviously a novice when it comes to, like, understanding rulings around development practices, but I don't understand how the one bill into statute now would dovetail with the comp planning requirements and opportunities.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the bill that you're referencing, and so I guess, like, I don't know what the impacts will be as a result of it, because I'm not familiar enough with what it does or what it's set out to do or what the goal of it is. But you know, generally speaking, in comprehensive plans, there's and I'm not an expert on the Growth Management Act or comp plans either, but the comp planning rule framework, that, as far as I know, it still provides a lot of latitude to the local jurisdiction, right? Because it says, in general, we want you to consider these, like, 12 or 14 different characteristics. We want you to consider the environment. We want you to consider transportation. We want you to consider housing. We want you to consider education. We want you to consider kind of all these big buckets of things that communities need to be concerned with, and that you tell us in your comp plan how you are addressing these items, right? And so if the city wants to sort of emphasize one over another, you know, I think they've got some discretion to do that in their comprehensive plans. And then it's just a matter of having that approved by Department of Commerce to say, like, yep, we'll honor this. We support this decision that you're making for yourself, and go forward and do good things. So I don't know. I know that when it comes to you know, requirements over trees in the urban landscape, there really are no state statutes that protect that. There's no mandates or requirements that trees have to be protected in urban landscapes. It's whatever the rules of the local jurisdiction are the highest rules, the highest laws about what can and can't happen with trees in the urban landscape. There are some, like Department of Fish and Wildlife has their priority habitats and species. And so if there was a habitat or a particular species that was on that list that was being impacted by development, then in theory, those carry greater protections, but there's not a clear way to know, you know, if some of that is identified, how it actually gets protected. This was an issue that came up in the city of Lakewood, where there was a lot of development in a warehouse district in the city of Lakewood. And that warehouse district was located in what was naturally Gary Oak savanna habitat. So Gary Oaks were being removed for warehouses, and some members of the community piped up and said, well, this is a Department of Fish and Wildlife priority habitat and species. You can't just do this. And so it's led to some serious changes in that city. They passed a new tree ordinance that they never had before, and they authorized funding to hire their first city forester to sort of get at this issue about how you balance those things. So.
Thanks, Ben. You know, there's always more questions than there is time. And I think we need to forge on into the rest of our agenda here. But one more time, I would like to say thank you very much to you and your team, Julia. I know Emily was out on the road there, Emily. So really appreciated all the links to further our informational sources. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll invite you back.
I hope not. I hope
We're
not.
working on it, and we'll probably hear from Megan Dunn too as things go forward. So thank you so much, Ben. We really, really have appreciated
right.
this presentation.
All right. Take care, everyone. And
Good.
thanks, Julia, for your help today.
I mean, you're welcome to stay, but
No, I'm late for another meeting, so.
take care.